opinion on Catcher in the Rye is that it was confusing, focusing mainly on the vernacular of it. The book takes place in the 1950s, and if you didn't grow up in that time, it's really hard to understand some of the phrases that Holden uses. He uses things like old Sally and hell of a lot, and those just aren't things people say nowadays. And so I had to take a step back and reread the things because I was like, wait, what did he say again? So I just found that language to be confusing. And if you're a person that doesn't like it to be just straightforward, you will not enjoy this. So I don't recommend it to anybody who likes things to just be straightforward. If you like more literary depth and a lot of different things going on, then you would love this book. But I'm a person that I'm more on the stick straightforward side, so it was kind of confusing to me.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Goodwin. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Today we'll be talking about the book Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. What's your overall opinion of this book?
I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a classic interpretation of what teenagers go through. You see teenagers today, and they see these supermodels and actresses, and they see a perfect image, and it's not real. When this book, it portrays a character, Holden, who is real and goes through real-life struggles. It's relatable because it goes through themes like isolation, alienation, struggles with growing up, and it's really relatable to kids because kids often feel alone, and, it's hard to grow up.
How so?
Well, in the book, Holden hires a prostitute, which is like a representation of adulthood. And he hires her and he's all ready to do everything, and he realizes that he's not ready when she gets there, and it's an interpretation because he has this vision of adulthood, but then he realizes it's not all it is cracked out to be.
Could you elaborate on the details of Holden and the struggles of growing up?
Yes, a main point that we had about this theme is that the carousel, we took this as interpreting the carousel of youth. And Holden is urging his younger sister Phoebe to ride the carousel, and he said, "You're not too old." And it's just like him saying, I regret the mistakes I've made in the past, but I don't want you to make the same, because he loves her so much.
And would you recommend this book?
Yes, definitely. I would recommend it to ages 13 to 18 because, it has some mature content, but it can relate to things kids are going through, and that's really special.
What advice would you give to kids so that they could get the most out of reading this book?
Some advice I would give is to learn from Holden's mistakes. Don't try to grow up too fast, and definitely cherish your childhood.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Mrs. Talley. We are so happy you could be here.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here.
Could you give us your opinion on the book?
Well, I hate to say this, but honestly, I didn't really like it that much. Holden, the main character, was overall very negative, and he was expelled from school. He ran away from his responsibilities, and all he wants to do is just corrupt himself. And the whole time, every person he interacts, he just sees the worst in them. So honestly, I don't think he's a good role model for children.
How so?
Well, for one, he ordered a prostitute, and he even said, and I quote, "I don't want any old rag." So that just shows his lack of respect for women. He also contemplated suicide multiple times, which I don't feel as if that we should plant that in children's minds. He even said that he was the most terrific liar ever, and that's awful. But even though he said it was awful, that didn't stop him from lying all the time. And multiple time again, he only saw the negative in people. He says he was surrounded by jerks, but then 2 lines down, he calls a girl and a guy funny looking. Does that sound like a good role model for your children? I don't think so.
Would you recommend this book?
Well, as I have so clearly stated, I don't think it's a good book for no matter what the age is, anybody, because it will still put an image in people's minds that that's what you should be like, and I don't think Holden represents that at all.
What advice would you give to future readers?
Well, although I don't want anyone to read it, if someone does, I hope they learn from Holden's mistakes and not follow his footsteps.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Hello, Mrs. Elric. We're so happy you could meet us here today.
So glad I could join you.
Could you give us your opinion on the book?
Yes, I loved reading this book. I feel like Holden is such a relatable character. He has a brilliant mind, but people just mistake it for mental instability. That's why he ends up in the mental hospital. But I feel like Holden is just failing to apply himself because, like other boys at Pensy, he doesn't want to be a lawyer or a doctor. He just wants to live a life that's meaningful to him in his own eyes.
Interesting. What can you tell us about the title, The Catcher in the Rye?
Well, The Catcher in the Rye actually is just an old nursery rhyme that Phoebe and Holden talk about. The Catcher in the Rye itself is a mysterious existence that lives a solemn existence but saves other people from their bad decisions.
How do you think Holden views life differently than others?
Holden's teacher, Mr. Spencer, once told him that life is a game. Holden hated hearing this because he viewed life in such a detailed and complicated way, and he thought that Mr. Spencer saying this belittled life. He thought life deserved more of a title than a game.
Would you recommend this book?
I would recommend it to people who are looking for an intellectual read, something they can wrap their head around.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor to have you here today.
Thank you.